I'm Debbie Huntsman. I'm the president of the National Women's Sailing Association, and this is the She Sailor Sea Story. NWSA, the National Women's Sailing Association, we create safe waters for women and girls to thrive in sailing.
So our next presenter is Sarah Pederson, and she has an amazing story to tell this evening. I'm going to introduce her as she has been sailing, it sounds like, pretty much her whole life while growing up in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And she taught offshore sailing in Florida and the BVI's for a while. She is a member of the U.S. Sailing Safety at Sea Committee, which is amazing. I took their course and can't speak highly enough about it. And Sarah has a pretty harrowing story to share that I cannot wait to hear. So we're going to go ahead and pass it over to you, Sarah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I really enjoy telling my story because I think we all have a lot of lessons that we can learn from it. Obviously, this isn't something that I planned on doing on this particular race. And so you got to kind of just take it what it is. And I think Victoria was talking a little bit about that too in her presentation about how she had to problem solve throughout trying to, manage her boat and things like that. And you just have to just go for it. And Victoria, that's a good, you did a great job again, as well as other people have told you and stuff like that. The moment that my head popped out of the water and I saw the boat pinned on the side, I didn't really exactly know what had happened, other than I knew that I was in Lake Michigan in 56-degree water in the middle of a thunderstorm. What had happened with the boat, and after 50 years of sailing, I knew what I needed to do. I literally said out loud to myself, Sarah, this doesn't have to be your end. You know what to do. And I credit all the men and women that I've sailed with that had taught me how to manage this situation. I was on a boat, J111, that was sailing in what we call a hook race, and it originates in Racine, Wisconsin, and it goes through Menominee. It gives you an idea about what the race is all about. It's 193 miles. You can see why it's called the hook, because it is shaped like a hook. Again, it starts outside Racine, Wisconsin. It is on Lake Michigan, and the finish line is in Menominee. Okay. So one of the things that we knew what was happening is the forecast for the duration of this particular race was going to be nasty. We knew that it could potentially be 30 knots of wind. It was a southwest wind, which would indicate it would be downwind the whole way, spinnaker, things like that. And so we also knew that we would be following some storms that were coming through. We went through a storm through Milwaukee. Early on, we caught the tail end of it. I mean, the outside of it, edge of it. And then when we got hit at 4 a.m, we had been tracking this storm all night long as it traveled across Minnesota and through the western part of Lake Michigan. I mean, the western part of Wisconsin right there. You can see the track of this particular storm. The star that you see is where we were at the particular time that we were hit at 4 a.m. So we know this one was going to be nasty. So obviously sailed with some really good people, been sailing a long time. We knew what we needed to do. We started in preparation. So when in preparation for the storm and the wind started to increase, the skipper then decided to take the main down and secure it. So there was 3 down below, 5 above. All 5 above were wearing all the gear that is required and expected for this type of race, with life jackets, safety harnesses, tethers, and strobes, whistles, what was required for the race, and plus for safety. Once again, this boat was a J111, has raced multiple Macs and Port Huron races, and is quite experienced. So with our crew of 8, at the time that the 50 plus and some boats registered 70 plus winds came through. We had a momentary and wind shift. We went from the southwest wind to a northeast wind. It lasted about 5 seconds, but it auto-tacked the boat. So when the crew that was sitting on the windward side is now sitting on the low side, scrambling to the windward side. The boat rounded up, and what happened was the water came down the port side of the boat as she was rounding up and getting pinned, and lifted 2 crew members, me being the first one near the coaming, and Mark sitting next to me, and or actually Mike sitting next to me. I could feel Mike's hand on my ankle as I was being lifted and sent off the boat. I had no idea how I got off that boat. So like, once again, when I popped up out of the water, I had no idea how I ended up there. I thought initially I went under the lifelines. I did not. I went over the lifelines. What had happened was my safety harness let loose. It did not break. We have no idea why it released. It released at the chest level. So all that was left of me after we rounded up and got pinned in 70 plus knots of wind, according to other people's anemometers, was my safety harness. And I am in 56-degree water in a thunderstorm in Lake Michigan, about 5 miles offshore, at 4 o'clock in the morning in the dense fog. So first thing, as I said, I did was I said I knew what I needed to do. Lots of in the dark. Yes, in the dark. Lots of self-talk, lots of talking to yourself and how you're going to figure out how to do this. So initially, I turned on my strobe because I did not have a water activated strobe on. So I turned on my strobe. I knew I needed that. I pulled up my whistle. I kicked my sea boots off because I knew I didn't need those. And I started waiting. I started to use my whistle quite a bit, but I couldn't breathe any longer. One of the things I really, really had to do, and because there really isn't any time frame, I didn't have it in a timeline. I didn't do this first. I didn't have any plan, was to control my breathing. I had to get my breathing under control. I knew I didn't have the cold water shock that you would think you would have. I don't know why. I just didn't. I didn't. And I thought that was great because that variable was out of what it was going on with me. So I was able to get my breathing under control. So then after I had kicked off my boots, I really needed to tread water. The next problem that I had was, I was in a inherently buoyant life jacket. In other words, I was not in an inflatable. I was in a regular life jacket. So that was great because I knew it would work. What I had on underneath my life jacket was a thin pair of gill pants, and I had a smock as I went when I was in the water. The next problem that I did have was waves. The waves were approximately 5 to 6 feet by this time that the storm was coming through. And remember, we had up to pretty close to 25 knots most of the whole race. And this is 4 a.m. We started at 10 on Saturday morning. So it had a good chance to build throughout the day and then into the night. So I kept sucking water down, and I kept going through my nose and in my down my mouth. And I knew that that was not a good thing, because I knew that I was going to suck all this water and I'd really have problems then. So my biggest problem at that particular time was how I was going to deal with the waves. I was dealing with the waves by keeping an eye off my right shoulder and putting my shoulder into the wave and allowing the wave to go over my head. That's how I dealt with that problem. So I have no concept of time. I have no idea how long I've been in the water. I have no idea where anybody is. I can't see. My stepson was sailing on a Tartan 10, and when he was driving through the race itself, he could not see the mast, and he was steering and could not see the mast because of the rain was so torrential and the fog had set in so bad. So needless to say, it was going to be the needle in the haystack in terms of finding me. I have to tell you, there always is that little bit of luck involved in all of this. One of the things is because imagine you are on a port tack, you get auto-tacked, you get slammed, the boat rounds up into the wind. The people down below, as with the rest of us, we're all standing on the windward side. Well, now everybody's on the low side. So the crew member who was going after when a man overboard or person overboard was called, she went up to the radio to push the button on the man overboard on the GPS. It's not required. This particular system requires you to hold the button down for 3 seconds. The boat is on its ear. She can't climb. She cannot hold it. She had the wherewithal to grab her phone and take a photo of the latitude and longitude off the GPS. So at least there was a lat longe that she could tell the Coast Guard at least a close enough position of where I had left the boat. So there, again, it's all about problem solving. It's all about trying to figure this out. The next challenge was whether or not my strobe light was going to go out. I had never, ever changed my batteries in my strobe light. And I have had that strobe light for probably 10 years. I pull it out of the bag every hook race. I turn it on, it flashes, I turn it off, I put it in my bag, and I then attach it to my life jacket as need be. A strobe light goes along 24 hours if it's got good batteries in it. That's about the life of the strobe. I learned that after I went in the water. So basically I had to turn, so I said a little prayer to couple people in my life and said, let's just keep this light going, because that was the only thing that was going to find me. And that is the only thing that found me, is that they saw the flashing light. I guess that's the lesson learned right there, is to make sure that you change your batteries in your strobe light. When I was lifted by the waves, I went to the top of each wave and I call it my Statue of Liberty. I pulled my strobe up as high as I could get it, so that I made myself bigger. You have to figure out how you're going to get yourself visible. So every time I went up on a wave, I held it higher, as high as I could get it. Did I ever think I would die? Yeah, I did once. I have to tell you, I wasn't afraid. I was not afraid. Obviously, I live in Florida now. There's no sharks in Lake Michigan. That variable was out of there. I didn't have to worry about that one. But yeah, I saw the boats like halfway through, might have been. I'm not, like, again, I have no time. I don't really have any time frame to all of this. So when that happened, I saw the strobe, the searchlight of the J111, and I saw the panels of the Coast Guard, which obviously the Coast Guard was out there at this particular time. They turned away from me. It's like one of those videos where they're trying to find that person and that searcher turns away and they're like, okay, this is the end. And I thought that was the end. And I said to myself, I wonder what it's like to drown. I also thought about swimming because I was only 5 miles off and I knew that. Orientation was a big part of it. I knew where I was, and I used 2 things to figure out where I was. On my left, I could see when the fog lifted slightly, I could see the radio towers off of Sturgeon Bay, where the Coast Guard station was. So I knew that that was to my west because I know the area. Also, I watched the track of the storm. The storm went west to east. So as the lightning went across, I knew that it was going out of here, but also I knew that it was. I was lucky. I was really lucky. And I was lucky because of the fact that there was a couple of things that happened ahead of time. First of all, during COVID, I decided I wasn't going to take on the COVID-19, and I started using a water jogging program called Fluid Running. That's not a commercial, but that's just the information. And so basically I had treaded water for this program up to that for a number of minutes every day. So I had the stamina to do it. I also had, even though the temperature was 56 degrees, it had recently turned over. So I don't think it was as cold. It didn't have a lot of time to really get mixed up. So that was one thing. I was 5 miles from the Coast Guard station. It wasn't 25 miles from the Coast Guard station or 50 miles from the Coast Guard station. You know, I was right there. There was no helicopter coming. I thought to myself, gee, isn't this nice? I could get a helicopter ride. No, there wasn't, because the cloud deck was too low. And I knew that. So I went through that in my head. And this be nice. I was transferred to the Coast Guard. I have to tell you, when they found me, I told them that don't kill me as the boat came up to me. Do not hit me. I've had enough already. Don't hit me. Because as I watched the boat come closer, it was really hobby horsing. It was really pounding as in the waves. And I thought, oh no, I'm going to be in the water for 50 minutes. I'm going to die because this boat is going to land on me. I just know it. So even though I entered the water at 4 o'clock in the morning, I knew that it would be dawn soon. So I really had some hope there. I wasn't going to be, I was not going to be in the dark for very much longer. So that was another piece that was going for me at that time. What are the things that I would do differently? First of all, replace my life jacket. The gentleman from Safety at Sea told me I needed new equipment, and I knew that. But so what I would buy is an inflatable with crotch straps, because my life jacket lifted. I could not float on my back because I did not have head support, you know, which would have saved energy, things like that. And the number one thing I would have is I would have a hood, which the newer life jackets all have a hood because there is the potential of what they call secondary drowning, which is the actual sucking of the water from the waves up your nose and your mouth. So you may not drown like we think drowning could happen, but you could drown from that particular thing. One of the things we can't describe, or we can't figure out why my shackle released. My stepson took it to his engineering, did some tests on it, and it's not broken, whatever. The only thing we can think of is the pull tab on it is very long. So our recommendation to anything is to cut it short just enough so you can grab it with your thumb and your fingers so you can pull it. You have to have it. It's there for a reason. You're getting dragged as you go overboard. You got to have a quick release. Okay. But one of the things we think it was too long, maybe while I was flailing or I went over it or whatever, but we think it got caught and opened. Because I did check it before I went out. I actually rearranged it, I snapped it, I double checked it, so I knew it was locked. I would get a personal location beacon. I would do a PLB. They could have found me a lot faster. They would have known where I was. I believe you can rent them from Boat US. So if you only do like one race a year when you don't want the expense, but you always have to remember that as you switch boats, you have to have it re-registered with each boat that you're on. I was lucky. Coast Guard told me that night rescues are pretty rare. But obviously I had some really good people looking for me. Lots of very experienced men and women who didn't give up. And so here I am today.
Wow, Sarah, that is an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing it. I mean, it's definitely, you hit so many different points in there, and I'm so glad that you lived to tell the tale.